All right, we'll just give it a couple more minutes for people to switch over. And we're going to talk about age. Today with us, we have Lori Trawinski. Lori is a thought leader on age diversity in the workforce. That's a topic in diversity that is very underrepresented, and we decided to highlight the importance of it, especially in the context, as we discussed, of the workforce shortage. Lori is a director at AARP Public Policy Institute. She's also an adjunct faculty member at NYU, teaching in both analytics, people analytics program, as well as in the diversity and inclusion program. So Lori, without further ado, please take it away.
Okay. So thank you very much, Anna, for the great introduction and for the opportunity to be here for the conference. I'm really honored to be here to talk about age. So now I would like to go. I need to go to my first slide, please. Okay, so we'd like to get started here with a look at what I call the diversity dog. We have seen many iterations of diversity, equity, and inclusion presentations that contain things like the diversity wheel, the diversity iceberg. I start with the diversity dog. I like to do it a little differently. So what do you see when you see this particular animal? Do you see strength? Do you see someone who is happy? Is this person with a positive outlook? Do they see opportunity? Do you see someone who's restrained? Is this a boy or a girl? Can we tell? So many times in the world of diversity, we encounter someone and we make certain assumptions unconsciously at first glance. My other question about the diversity dog is, when you look at this dog, do you know how old the dog is? Is it a puppy? Is it a mature adult? Or is it perhaps an older dog? And how will that affect how you interact with the dog? So in the interest of full disclosure, I would like you to meet Peanut. She is a female and she is 6 years old. And so I start with this because we all make assumptions about age when we encounter people. And I like to just think about that and get you thinking about age. And so you're thinking, well, okay, so we're talking about age. Why are we talking about age in the workforce? This is a topic, we don't like to talk about. Most people don't want to disclose what their age is. And the interesting thing about that is age is the one dimension of diversity that everyone has in common. And the other interesting thing about it is the one dimension of diversity that changes over time, because you age every year, ideally, and so your entree into the workplace when you are younger is a different experience than when you enter a new position when you're older, and that's because age is a big part of who you are, and your perspectives and your experience changes over time. So you might say, okay, so why are we talking about age in the context of work? It's a sensitive issue, and it's fraught with challenges potentially. Well, the reason why we have to talk about it is because America's workforce is aging. If you look at the left, the graph on the left shows some data, which is the population in the year 2020 in the United States. As you go up the pyramid, that's how many older people are currently living at the older age brackets. The graph on the right is a projection that shows what the US population should look like in the year 2050. And as you can see, the upper bars are getting wider and wider, meaning people are living longer, and we're seeing it in all the older age brackets, and it's a pretty stunning change. So what are the implications for the workforce? What are the implications for employers? The implications are that we now have 5 generations in the workforce working side by side. And there can be a great difference in the way people approach one another based on what generation you're from. We all develop certain working habits when we're younger. Excuse me. And then as you advance in age and as time goes on, your perspectives may change, but they may not. But an inherent part of who you are comes from how much technology was around when you were younger, what the norms were in society at the time you were developing. So we have 5 generations in the workplace at the same time. Do we communicate with one another well? Are we understanding one another? Are we giving each other the opportunity to be heard? And so these are the kinds of questions that you want to think about. So in terms of data and in terms of the current workforce, this chart shows us the average age of currently employed people in the United States. So as you can see, if you look at the older brackets, so the 45 to 54, 55 to 64, and 65 plus, that's a sizable number of people that are working. So as those population charts move over time, you're going to see increasing numbers of people in those older age groups. And so as someone who works for AARP, which is an organization that represents people ages 50 and older, you can see that issues relating to older workers are important today, and they're going to continue to be important tomorrow. So that's one of the reasons why we always start with data when we're having these conversations, because it's an issue today and an increasingly important issue tomorrow. So one of the things I like to think about when we talk about this is, when you look at this data and when you think about your workforce, are you viewing this as a challenge or is it an opportunity? So let's talk about that. So it could be a challenge if you're seeing that people are not interacting well, if there is conflict because perhaps someone doesn't understand that a Gen Z person might prefer to communicate via text message, but an older person might prefer a phone call or an in-person meeting. So there are things like that can lead to conflict in the workplace. There are things like not giving people the chance to speak or be heard because you assume, they don't, we see it in both directions. Sometimes a younger person doesn't get the credit they deserve because someone views them as some young person who may not, they assume they don't have experience or they don't have knowledge or something. You see it in the opposite direction where younger people often assume that older people just don't know about new things. And so what I will say here is stereotypes are not a good thing, no matter which direction they go, and that we should always take the time to get to know one another and have discussions so that, the conflicts are minimized and ultimately we see an opportunity. And I'll say this, we have data that shows that older entrepreneurs are much more successful than younger entrepreneurs. And that probably is a result of many years of experience and seeing different challenges throughout their career, so that when they go to create a business or develop something new, they have a little bit more experience. And so ultimately their businesses tend to be more successful. At the same time, we know that mixed age teams often produce greater innovation. The idea that diverse perspectives get together and people talk, and you have an open dialogue, you create a very fertile ground for new ideas. People share across age groups, and at the end of the day, the innovation comes out stronger than when you have a team of only young people or only older people. And I think if diversity equity and inclusion as an issue has taught the world anything, it's that everyone does better. Companies do better. People work better when everyone is included and is listened to and heard. So that's the message today, is that everyone has a voice and deserves the opportunity to be heard. Now, one of the things that often stands in the way of older people in the workplace is the issue of discrimination. And in the year 2020, we conducted a survey and we found out that 78% of older workers had either seen or experienced age discrimination in the workforce. So that's a stunning number. That's a lot of people. And so, you might say, why is this happening, or how is it happening? We do have age protections in the Age Discrimination and Employment Act, which protects people ages 40 and older from being discriminated based on age. However, like many great laws, the ability to prove it and the hurdles that people must pass to be able to prove a discrimination case, especially in the area of hiring, makes it extremely difficult to succeed. So for anyone out there who is thinking about age in the context of their diversity, equity, and inclusion program, the other thing you can think about is the benefits that addressing it have for your risk and compliance issues. So, is it better to educate your workforce about how to be age inclusive than it is to ultimately face a lawsuit, an age discrimination lawsuit that gets highly publicized and brings a lot of bad publicity to your organization? So with like many areas of diversity, there is benefit to addressing things head on and to taking the time to educate your workforce, to raise awareness, to train your managers, and to think about all of the implications of certain actions and whether or not they will impact a particular group who falls into a protected category. So that's one reason to include age in your D&I strategy. So back in 2015, I started looking at companies that include age within their D&I programs. And in 2015, I was able to find an interesting stat from PwC where they surveyed global CEOs and found that 64% of them had a D&I strategy, but of those, only 8% included age as a dimension. So it is an overlooked dimension. Now, the good news is in 2020, AARP did a separate survey of global executives. And this is, to me, a very stunning finding. The same 64% of those folks also said they have a D&I strategy, but a much higher percentage of them are now including age as part of it. So I think that's an important finding, and I think it's further support for the concept that addressing age in DEI strategy has a benefit both to the people who work for the organization as well as to the bottom line of the company. So now I'd like to switch over to a very quick audience poll and ask, does your company or organization include age as a dimension of your diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy? Please vote. You should see a poll on your screen right now, and hopefully you're anxiously answering. So while the final poll results are coming in, I'm going to just move on. Okay, so I want to just talk really briefly to give you some ideas about ways that you could include age in your DEI strategy. So one first step you could do is review the statistics on your workforce. by age. So take a look at your employee base. How old are the people in your workforce? How old are the people you recently hired? What are the retention rates for people in different age groups? Who's getting promoted? And also take a look at your termination data and look both at, you know, your voluntary terminations, your retirements, and also your involuntary terminations. And you can learn a lot about what's happening by age. And it may be a way you have not viewed your data before. So the other thing you can do is to make sure that you're looking at your recruiting and interviewing practices. We like to advise people to have mixed age interview panels. And we also want to encourage people to think about where it is you're recruiting. Many times organizations will go straight to colleges and universities to try to find potential new hires. But when you do that, you're overlooking older experienced workers who may be in the midst of a career transition or maybe just looking, you know, for a different type of employment. And so by restricting yourself only to recent college graduates, you may be leaving out some important opportunities. Now I'm going to just say I think everyone can see these poll results that you know, the highest percentage of people do not actually currently include age as a dimension of your strategy there, and a good chunk, you know, 35% of you aren't really even sure. So here's the opportunity for people watching today is to think about ways that you can make a difference when you go back to your organization and try to, you know, try to think about ways to include age. So anyway, other ways you can include DEI strategy age in there. Make sure your training opportunities are available to everyone. We also have recently looked at benefit programs and the idea that one example, student loan repayment assistant, is a benefit that can be very helpful to recent college graduates. But it's also a benefit that can be very helpful to your older employees who happen to have Parent Plus loans, and perhaps they could benefit from repayment assistance for those loans. So these are ways you can help your employees across the life cycle by thinking about different types of benefits that could appeal to people. Another way to think about age in the workplace is to create a multi-generational employee resource group. There are really great mentoring and cross-mentoring opportunities available in those types of programs. I can also just share a few resources with you at the moment. This link will bring you to a case study report that looks at examples of what 5 organizations have done to address age within their workforce DEI programs. So if you're looking for more resources, this is one place you might find a few other ideas. AARP also provides resources for employers and job seekers. So we often will run virtual career fairs, and you can find more information there. And then for the employers in the audience, we have something called the Pledge Program, where we work with employers who are interested in being committed to creating an age diverse workforce and ensuring that age discrimination is not something that's present within their workplace. And finally, AARP has another resource, which is the Living, Learning, and Earning Longer Collaborative. And information is available at this website. And we are working with global organizations to share learnings and best practices across across age diversity and across the world. So it's a collaborative sponsored by AARP, OECD, and the World Economic Forum. And so if you're interested in learning more, I recommend that. So. So now if we have time, I'd be happy to take any questions from the audience. And I hope you enjoyed the video. And my apologies to all of the cat people in the audience. I'm a little bit of a dog kind of person, so.
Thank you so much, Lori. That was absolutely great. We do have a few minutes for a couple of questions. We have two questions actually from Beverly Taruli here. One is about if you are seeing with the need for better information about age and opportunities, do you see companies changing their cultures, becoming more accepting when it comes to aging? Do you have kind of a national tracker around age acceptance in the corporate world? What are the trends?
So we don't actually have a national tracker. We did in the past do, we called it the Best Employers Program for people age 50 plus. And at that time, we collected a lot of information. For instance, BMW modified their manufacturing facilities to create more comfortable assembly line accommodations, rubber pads to make it easier, and they put stools in, and they modified some of the machinery to make it easier for people to work in those jobs. But the interesting thing is it benefited people of all ages, even though it was ultimately designed because they had some older workers. So there are employers who come up with innovative ideas. One of the things we're trying to track through the Learning Collaborative is a set of promising practices from employers across the globe. So currently, I can't say we have a database of such things, but it's certainly something we are striving to work toward.
And one other really quick question, as you probably know, Linda Grattan's research from London Business School on retirement and longevity. Her first book was called The 100-Year Life, where she's basically presented a very compelling business case for really extending our mental model of what working age is. So with the retirement being pushed out, how do you plan to be working with companies on rethinking their policies, rethinking their strategies? To Beverly's question, a lot of hiring happens for the runway. Does the person have a runway that is several steps ahead of them, which is not the same, again, in a biased way, consideration for the older workers. So what are like significant changes that need to happen in employment practices that you track?
So one thing is addressing the age discrimination issue, because we do see that people are living longer, and it's no longer acceptable to retire at age 60 and then expect to have enough savings and money to live for another 30 or 35 years on a pool of money that you basically have had to save for yourself, because many people do not have pensions anymore. So we are seeing, more people are going to want to work longer, more people are going to need to work longer. And so it's a huge challenge for America. It's a challenge in the European countries and the Asian countries. It's really a worldwide issue because we are seeing, a lot of longevity benefits that prior generations didn't have. And so it's going to be incumbent on employers to think differently about who they're hiring, especially the older people. And as one of them, I will tell you, I don't feel like I'm an older worker, but in the classifications, I am. And, I'm not done yet. And many people are not. So we need to keep the hiring officials open to this longevity model.
Thank you so much, Lori. That was fascinating. And thank you for sharing the dogs. That was a really interesting metaphor. Totally agree. Thank you. We're moving on to our neurodiversity panel. We'll see you on the other end. Thank you.